guys, episode 2 of the BMW, and so at this point, after a lot of fighting with it, I eventually got the lower timing cover off, so I'll show you what is happening over there. Okay, so here we are looking at the chains and the chain guides. So obviously something is already visible, and what that is that the guide on this side was completely broken, like destroyed. And this wasn't like broken while I was taking the cover off. It literally just, it was broken. So that's kind of interesting. The chain itself looks kind of okay. Doesn't seem like it's destroyed much, but yeah, everything else, and also the U guide, as you can see, there is literally zero plastic here, so that thing is dead as it can be. These chains here in the back, they sort of look okay. The guides, I'm not sure, but it seems like there's, I sort of feel like they're loose a bit. I'm not sure, but anyway, I'm gonna change those as well, just for flips and giggles. Everything else seems sort of okay. Also, there's well, over here you can see some pieces of guides which are definitely not where they're supposed to be. And over here, let's have a look. Yep, there's some pieces over there as well. So can be pretty sure that we're gonna have to fish them out. So that's probably gonna be a lot of fun as well. And then eventually maybe I want to try and clean some of this crud off. And also you probably want to see the lower timing cover. So there it is, sitting pretty, well, not pretty, but yeah. So let's have a look. So on the back end, yeah, the chain has been beating on it a bit, so it only makes sense that the chain should be changed as well, just to be sure. And yeah, so I hope there's not a whole lot of metal shavings around, but I'll try to find anything I can and clean that up as best as I can. And yeah, that's about it with this. So our next step would be to remove the oil pan and see what's happening there, and then go forward with the removing the chains and stuff, and all that fun. But yeah, let's get to that. Right, so after about a bajillion bolts later, the oil pan is off. It did make a mess, but everything looks sort of okay here. And then on the oil pan itself, well, here we go. There's the nice caramel glaze and some chocolate bits inside, so that's great. And there's also a bunch of them, as mentioned, in the whatever below the oil pump, which you can see. So yeah, I'm gonna try to fish them out as good as possible, make that all clean and nice, and then gonna go forward and get those chains off and guides and all that stuff. So good luck to me. Alright, so another victory for Team Me. Yay. So as you can see, the sprockets, or yeah, chains and all that stuff is now off, including the guides, and I've been able to fish most of the stuff out, so I think should be good on this. And yeah, so here we are. Here's one, and here's two. So now I have to flip the chains, and then I can start putting back everything as it was. So a few notes. Here are the bolts and the timing wheels, I guess. So the nut that's on the vanos, so the outer one and the outer one and the inside one super tough to get loose, and they are right hand thread, so you're supposed to open them this way, and the same goes for this one. So both of them, the two here and the one here, the same on the other side for the two. They are all, you open them clockwise and you close them counterclockwise, and super tough to get off. The block actually jumped off. It's not the best block, but yeah, so it jumped off, but I think I got everything back into the correct order, at least it looks to be so. I hope it did. We'll see. Yeah, so already gone ahead and flipped the new chain tensioners there, and these doohickeys, as you can see, these are intended to just hold the tensioner in place when you're moving it, well, removing it and putting it back. Makes life a bit easier. On the original one on here, this actually broke off one of the shoes, so yeah, but luckily it didn't cause too much trouble putting back together. So next step is kinda, yeah, flip the chains, start putting it back together, hopefully get the timing all nice and aligned and stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and get that done. So as you can see, here's the new chain, here's the other one. I put some markings on it comparing to the sprockets. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy the markings onto the new chain, so I sort of kind of roughly know how it was and how it should be, at least on top, because the that part that was with on the U guide, that I don't think jumped any teeth, so I think that should be good. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, so one more note to make when you're removing stuff and then trying to put it back. Pay attention to all the details that you have. There was a green doohickey attached to this, so that's the U-guide positioning place where you put it. So there was this green thing here attached to this. Sort of confused what that was, but but here's what it looks like. This is what was attached to that, and so turns out this is this part here on the new guide. So this was actually attached there, and it pulled off from here when I removed it. So just pay attention to these little details to make sure that you don't kind of put one thing on top of the other and then break something. The same applies for these tensioners. They had, wait, let me just see if I can find it. Over here. So that's one of the guides right here, and then this part that's normally attached here, this was actually sitting in the engine, so I had to pull that out before I put the new ones in. So sort of just to pay note to that, and so you don't accidentally mess something up. Right, so after after some cleaning, got the covers looking a bit better. Don't have a pressure washer, so I can't get it like all the way clean, but it's still better. Changed the seal for the crankshaft, and on the car itself, all the new parts are on. The Vanos, both of them are retarded, so in their position everything looks pretty good. I do still have to torque these on both sides. I have torqued them to 20 Newton meters, but they have to go all the way to 110 according to BMW service whatever manual thingy. So that's gonna be fun. And yeah, so after that should be on our way to start putting it back together. I do have some more seals and stuff to replace, but that I can do while going through the motions. So the only thing right now is kind of boggling me is how to torque these properly, because the blocks aren't actually like they aren't fastened to anything. So in essence, if you turn it this way, the intake shaft, if you turn it closed, it will push the block against the head cover or head, whatever. Yeah, so it will push it against it, so it won't budge. But if you are trying to do this on this one, it wants to kind of lift up. So I'm trying to come up with an idea to keep them in place, because they don't have any way to actually fasten to anything. So I'm thinking about maybe sticking a block in between or something just to hold them in their position. And then it's on to the rest of the stuff. Now what's interesting though, I'm thinking about is when originally I took it off, this camshaft was actually a bit tilted, as I spoke about earlier. So essentially, now that everything is sort of like in position and tensioned and stuff, it's actually in this position. And if I remove the block, I have a feeling like it's not gonna flip back. Actually, it will probably flip back a bit, but then it will actually have a slack here on the U-guide. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with this, because then if I don't release This one then it's holding on to the teeth at the bottom, so it will not actually flip back to its position where it was. So I'm not sure if technically the correct position when it's top dead center would be for all of them to point upwards, the camshafts I mean. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes, but I think it should be fine. So as far as like putting it back together, not a huge difficult job, a little bit of finagling, and I was able to get everything put on without removing these, so that's fine. And the marking the chains and stuff actually not really necessary, because technically they don't have a preferred position. So basically you just stick them on, make sure everything is kind of nice and tight around. So you start from here to make sure that this side is nicely under tension from both this one and the bottom one. So they go whoop underneath, and then when it comes back, what you want to do is you want to make sure that this side is in tension as well, and there's slack on the bottom chain. So as you put the tensioner on and kind of fasten it, it basically makes sure that everything is nicely in tension. And you don't want to over tension it, as far as everybody who knows something has said. So yeah, I think that part is pretty much done, and it's fairly simple and straightforward. And the only thing now is what I think I will do is I will actually add some oil, so sort of like before I close everything down. I'm gonna slightly use the oil that was in the engine and just lubricate the guides and chains a bit, just to make sure it doesn't like go dry, run dry for a minute or two until the oil pressure is up and the oil starts actually moving around the engine. So hopefully that'll help with that. Yeah, so that is the part. And then, oh yeah, forgot, have to also put the pan back, clean it up, still dirty. So yeah, pan goes back. And then last but not least, a few bits I ordered that I had to change was also the radiator plug, which broke off, and the crush washer for the plug on the oil pan, and the seal or gasket for the water pump. So yeah, everything else is done. Looks pretty good. If we're lucky, we'll be humming along just fine in a few days. Wish me luck, and we'll be back in a few. Alrighty, so here we are. The timing wheels are on. It's all timed. Everything is torqued down, so that is awesome. So putting a small wooden block in between the camshaft locking blocks and the body or whatever worked just fine. So yeah, got those torqued and everything looks to be alright. And also the thing I spoke about, the camshaft kind of flipping back to its original position once you remove the block, that fear was sort of unnecessary. So basically the chain of this one on the larger chain and the shaft itself are like separate systems. So once I released the block, the main chain stood where it is, and the inner thing basically popped into place. And I double checked a few guides, and apparently you do the timing first and remove the timing tool, and then take off the blocks. So it's supposed to be kind of going back to whatever its original resting place. But I'm guessing since it's Vanos and it's doing the calculations and whatnot, so that should be fine. But the good news is that the chains are on nicely tight. Everything is looking quite peachy. So yeah, and as you can see, I've already gone ahead and started reassembling. The lower timing cover is on. That seal is changed. all the all the bolts are on for the bottom one and torqued. The bottom one going upwards. Here are 4 bolts, 2 in the corner, 2 in the middle. These have to go in from the bottom, still to do. And also I put the upper cover, one of them, on. So yeah, and I have also changed all of the seals that kind of come with the kit. This one, when adding this specific cover, is a bit of a pain because the new seals are quite beefy, so it's not sitting in the correct place. So what I did was first like put it into its position, then forced my hand sort of like downwards onto the edge until I could get the upper bolt in. Same thing for that side. Then put in the rest of the bolts, kind of screwed them down but not like too forcefully, just so they kind of grab just nicely. And then I used a wooden block and a hammer to slightly kind of tap on both edges to make it kind of go downwards a bit, and then fastened it. So the way you can kind of tell if it's in position or not is over here, where you have the sort of the housing for the camshafts and whatever. Right here where you have the housing for the camshafts and stuff. This area is separated by the seal, and this is the cover itself. So you kind of have to look at it from this angle and make sure that the thing is nice and level. And same thing applies for that edge. And once that is done, you're pretty much good to go. So anyway, yeah, that is on. So unfortunately it is quite late and end of the day, so I'm gonna wrap up here and get to it tomorrow. Okay, so as you can see, I've been putting it back together. Everything is looking pretty nice, all things considered. The most annoying part in this process was basically getting the upper timing covers seated correctly, and that's probably because the new gaskets are much thicker than the worn out ones, so it was kind of sitting higher and outwards. So what I did, also a trick from the Danny's garage videos, is that I put it on just loosely, turned the bolts finger tight, and then slapped the top cover on, fastened these end bolts, and then using the second row of nuts with double washers basically screwed them down. So this pushed it down like into the place, and then screwed it all the way from here, and that's how they kind of got seated nice and tight. So everything looks pretty good. I like the way the seals are perfectly in connection. And then afterwards, as I was putting it together, I realized I have to take the airbox filter thingy off, and that was to get myself more room, because I couldn't see the back end of the cover and how the seals were sitting. So, and also to get the tubes and stuff out of the way a bit better, so I have space to put it back together. But yeah, everything is aligned properly as far as I can see. Everything looks good, and essentially I'm just going through the list backwards, removing items as I go. The throttle body is nice and shiny, cleaned. Everything else is in. The Jesus bolt got a good wrenching, so it should be close to whatever it was previously. And yeah, so it's going pretty great. At this point, what I have to do now is the engine itself is pretty much all in one piece. So what I have left now is I have to put the skid plate back remove the pin before this, otherwise I won't reach it. So this is probably the most annoying part of this leftover process, is basically because the skid plate is super heavy and the bolts are a proper pain in the proverbial butt to put back, because the bolts that hold the skid plate are also holding on to the whatchamacallit sway bar, I think. It's basically the long bar that connects the both of the struts and stuff. So anyway, that thing is held up by the same bolts that hold on to the skid plate, which is a pretty strange design choice, I guess. But yeah, so I think once that is on, the rest of the way is pretty simple. It's just throwing back the tubes and making sure all the connectors are connected. But so far it seems to be going quite nice, and to be honest, it's not really that difficult, especially since I have written down most of what I took off and how and where and when, and so sort of going step by step is pretty easy. The only issue that I have at this moment is that there are two bolts that are holding the whole assembly on. There's a third one there, and I have no clue where I put these, so that's gonna be cool to find them. I'm sure they are somewhere around, but yeah, so anyway, I'll get on with that, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so I decided to clean up the skid plate because it had quite a lot of like oil and sand and rocks sort of caked on it, and a lot of it came off, and I gotta say it became almost like half as heavy as it was, so a lot of the weight from it was actually oil and sand. Yep, so that was a good decision. Anyway, going on to putting it on. The pin is already out, so let's get that done. Alrighty, and here we are. Between takes I kind of got carried away a bit and put it all back together, well, most of it, and there are a few bits and pieces still missing, and the bottom cover needs to go back on, and I did push it out to make space in the garage. I wanted to actually turn it on earlier, but I couldn't because the battery was dead, so it did charge overnight, and so let's see, fingers crossed. Hopefully it starts up good, doesn't have any major issues. Yeah, I'm super nervous because obviously I've never done this before. It was the first time I've ever taken an engine apart that far. But yeah, fingers crossed. Let's see. Alright, here we go. So, shall it explode? Shall it work? Whew, nervous. Alright, let's see. Okay, so we do have some error messages. And the fog lights aren't there in the front, and the rear brake lights. Yeah, there's a connection issue with one of the sockets. I know if I bang on it, it'll be working again, so that's fine. All right, fingers crossed. Let's hope for the best. Oh wow, that is super silent. Well, I did actually sort of put a lot of oil on the chains and everything before I closed it to make sure that it's lubricated, but that is surprisingly silent. Wow. I could definitely hear the chain rattle a bit, and so that I'm not sure what that wine is, but it had that before. There's a slight clatter, but it's almost barely hearable. Wow, that is... Oh wow, I'm surprised. This is awesome. This is awesome. This is super awesome. Yeah, the lights will work, everything looks fine. It does have the engine thing, although I didn't clear the codes before I took it apart, so it could be just from memory. Yeah, I do have the scanner, so I'll check the codes later, but my friends, that I think is all there is with this. That's pretty good. All right, I do hear the I think the belts do have a bit of a slipping sound, so I might crawl under there, take a few bits apart, and make sure I got the tensioning good and tight. But other than that, it's definitely pretty nice. Oh, I'm so happy. Awesome. Well, that is it for this specific episode and for this project, other than a few bits and bobs and plastics that need to be sort of fixed, like the tunnels under beneath the bumper that were broken from a small fender bender in the past. Yeah, so I'll have to replace those, and so there's a bit more to do, but I think I'll do that after this. Meanwhile, there is a new project coming, which is also a pretty interesting one. Yeah, so if you want to see what is up next, make sure to stay tuned, and if you want to stay tuned, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next episode when it comes out. Yeah, well, anyway, hope you liked it, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Peace.